Hello again. This is Heidi Henderson with Slash Tax Podcast. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. And instead of doing a broad, lengthy introduction, I'm going to pass it straight to Devan with TaxHive because I think Devan is amazing and his firm is so interesting. I think you guys are going to be thrilled to hear about what they're doing, what they're building. And Devan, I'm so excited for you to share with people like what is your background, and let's talk about you and talk about TaxHive and get in the weeds on this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heidi. It's so exciting and honored and privileged to be on Slash Tax and to be in front of so many wonderful CPAs and business clients, investors, everyone that's in your ecosystem. And yeah, just by way of introduction, I'm Devan Egan, president here at TaxHive. We are a Kevin O'Leary company. So for those of you that care, Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, you may love him, you may hate him. Either way, you know who he is. He's the other bald guy in the organization, so we're always looking to, hire and acquire people that are a little bit follically challenged. But no, so I'm president of the company, and primarily manage our business development, our business strategy, and also a lot of our presenting and educating and delivering content and training to prospective clients and just our general ecosystem. But TaxHive as a firm, you asked the question or even kind of mentioned how we're unique in the space. We really got our origins long ago in as part of a real estate venture that we had, where we had a lot of real estate clients. My background is real estate sales, marketing, and I guess I could just kind of put on the table right out of the gates here. I'm not a CPA. I'm not the numbers cruncher in our organization. We have all of those wonderful people that are highly, uh, uh, sophisticated and educated and licensed and specialized in everything that they do. And while we were building our real estate portfolio and operating as business owners, I'm in a bunch of other businesses alongside TaxSide. You can see pickleball behind me. I'm in the pickleball business, have some fun stuff that way. But we started to identify a massive gap in the marketplace, particularly with real estate investors, but really with every business owner out there who was working with a very talented CPA, compliance officer, someone who, knew how to prepare and file taxes really well and kept everything accurate and by the book and checked the right boxes and calculated the numbers the right way. But there was this gap in strategy of just missing deductions and missing ways to save money with credits or tax gaps or what we call dynasty strategies. And what we kind of found was that you either had to be a really, really large business for anyone to pay attention to you, or you just kind of got lost in the shuffle. And a lot of firms either weren't willing to take the time or didn't really specialize in strategy that would help, let's call it $1 million gross revenue business, really capture the tax code and take full advantage of it. And so that's where TaxHive kind of got its origins. And we really just kind of focused our firm on tax strategy and tax planning while also taking care of the very necessary, but I would call them somewhat ordinary tasks of bookkeeping and tax preparation. So that's, I feel like, where we're unique in the marketplace is that we can help someone who's just starting out making their first $250,000 on up to a 10-20 million dollar business that wants to legally pay less in tax.
Amazing. I love the introduction. I appreciate that. And there's a reason that we're talking. And for listeners, I mean, I'm always talking about tax strategy, of course, with the company that I'm an executive with, Engineered Tax Services. We focus on handling the incentives for real estate investors. So the way that Devan and I connected through TaxHive and what they're doing is the synergies between a specialized firm like ours and what TaxHive is doing, because there is this dramatic need. Like Devan, you hit it on the head. It's like there's this total gap of service in the market when we look at the CPA industry and specialization in really almost any vertical, I think, but particularly real estate. So why do you think it matters if someone is or is not working with a CPA that has a specialization or understanding of real estate?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that it matters is that behind all of that process is money, and generally people care about their money. And Nobody would roll up to a, call it, drive-through restaurant and be okay paying an extra $10 per meal. Nobody would be okay going into a shoe shop and just because you were unaware or not informed, you had to spend an extra $20 per pair of shoes that you bought. And taxes isn't that much different. It's, if you don't know and you're not aware, you are overpaying. And for the real estate person out there and any other business owner, the tax code was written to incentivize your behavior. And the
Mhm.
behavior you're already exhibiting, which is I take risks, I deploy capital, I employ people, I contribute to the economy. And Uncle Sam already said, if you do those things, I'll give you some tax breaks. And a lot of people unknowingly view the tax code as their enemy when really it's actually your advantage. It is your friend if you know how to take advantage of it. And maybe some of the challenge that exists out of there, a lot of the noise in the marketplace is that the average real estate professional and or business owner doesn't know where to go. They don't know where to look for help, and they're on a Reddit thread somewhere. They're typing a prompt to an AI, agent, and they're like, "Can I really trust this? Does this actually fit for me, or am I just going to get myself in a bunch of trouble?" And that's where TaxHive comes in to just say, hey, we're going to help you. We're going to discover those things on your behalf. We're going to help you implement. And you can sleep at night knowing you didn't do anything illegal or nefarious. And that's when, Heidi and your team over at Engineered Tax Services comes in to say, hey, we can have these strategic partners that are highly specialized in these certain strategies also, help you with getting the water to the end of the row and helping you keep as much money as possible.
Like, that is the epitome of what I talk about on this podcast all the time. And when I present in person, I'll say it all the time. I'll ask for a show of hands, who here views the IRS as their partner in the success of their business or looking at them as being some type of a funding partner. And everybody laughs and nobody would possibly raise a hand. But to your point, it's exactly right. Like there is a roadmap. The difficulty with the roadmap, it is about as complicated as, imagine looking at one giant map, a literal road map of the United States and all of the roads that exist in this country. That's kind of what the US IRS tax code looks like. And I pulled a stat in prep of this podcast, and I was actually surprised. And I work a lot in the CPA industry. 86% of existing CPA firms have fewer than 10 employees. So the vast majority of CPA firms, many of the CPAs that our clients are working with as taxpayers, as business owners, as real estate investors, they are working with, maybe it was the CPA that their parents worked with, or it's a friend of theirs, or it's someone that they know that's local. That is not a bad thing. I never want to kind of throw anybody under the bus. I have amazing CPAs that I work with and accountants. What I want to highlight a little bit is how people can kind of understand maybe why they are overpaying, maybe why they or their CPAs haven't identified some opportunities. I mean, we can always talk about cost seg as an easy one because it's like the constant question that I get all the time is, well, if this is true, then why didn't I know about it? Or why wasn't this mentioned? Or why wasn't this provided as an option for me? And it's not out of negligence. And I think that's a really important thing. So dive into that a little bit, the complexity of the code and the sort of discrepancy between different levels of taxpayers and the service provided. Because before you answer that question, that is essentially why our founder started Engineered Tax Services. 25 years ago, he worked for a big four firm. He was looking at the top one percenters, the Fortune 100 companies that had every tax strategy in the world. They had the roadmap and
Hmm.
they had all of these people. Now, granted, they pay, $500,000 a year or more to prepare their tax returns and strategize. I mean, a normal person, a normal taxpayer, they don't have access to that type of uh, expertise and specialized knowledge. That's kind of how we started this firm was, to what Julio will say is democratize the tax code and make it really available for every single taxpayer at every level. I think that you all are very similar in that concept. And so I would love for you to kind of expound more on what you said as it relates to that and how you're servicing clients with that understanding and sort of setting that baseline.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the first thing I can put on the table is that our firm does not disparage any existing CPA tax preparer that someone is already working with. Most of those people are doing fantastic work. They know their stuff. They are precisely accurate. They have attention to detail. They're doing a task that you paid them to do. They're
Yeah.
not doing a task that you didn't pay them to do is maybe the fairest way to put it. And when we deliver a tax plan to clients, they oftentimes want some pitchforks and, you know, like they're mad and they want to go back to their CPA and say, "Why didn't you?" And they're ready to like, slap someone. And we're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't need to be mad at anybody. You need them. You
Yeah.
still need a great tax preparer, even in the context of robust, thorough tax strategy." And so that's the first, I think, distinction that I would make is that don't be mad at your tax. This would be like getting mad at the cashier at the grocery store when they ring you up because maybe they didn't follow you around and identify all of the coupons and the rebates and the discounts that you could have gotten on a different loaf of bread or on a different set of facts and circumstances, right? So what we want to deliver, or what we kind of feel like we bring to the table, is number one, the strategy, so that when you end up at the cashier you just legally owe less. Number two, I think that you mentioned some of the challenge is that the average firm employs about 10 people. And it's that most firms are not built for scale. And so a lot of the challenge in the marketplace that exists today is that there isn't a solution because the firms that are doing some strategy alongside tax preparation, they're no longer taking any more clients, right? I mean, like, how many times have you heard that?
Exactly.
It's not that because, you know, they don't have a great suite of services. It's just that they have a limiting factor on their capacity to deliver great service. So this might surprise many people on the call, but a lot of our referring partners are CPAs. They are like in the tax business and they don't have any more bandwidth for clients, either on the tax prep front, the bookkeeping front, or particularly the tax strategy front. And we're an operation that is built for scale. We've built large businesses and we know how to utilize systems and technology and CRMs and get the most out of our people and track and monitor service levels of how quickly we respond to emails and text messages and phone calls. And that's maybe a challenge in the marketplace is that the average person that graduates from college and gets a degree in accounting, they didn't get a degree in business management and in marketing and in sales and all of these other things that are tangible to an operation. And so it's maybe, I don't want to say it's easy because it's not, but it's easier to get to a 10 employee firm and maybe a couple of partner CPAs to service a robust book of business. It's really difficult to take that to the next level and be able to do it at scale across all 50 states. And that's what TaxHive does. And so I think that the tax strategy that we get into sometimes is surprising to folks. In some cases, they'll take a strategy or even a myriad of strategies that we deliver, and they'll run back to their tax preparer and they'll say, "Is this okay?" And we have to remind people that sometimes that tax preparer is a compliance officer and they're operating not only in the shallow end of the pool, but they like to keep you on the stairs so that nobody's going to drown, right? Nobody's going to get in trouble. And anyway, we've just, as complex as the tax code is, I like how you've said it. You democratize it, you make it accessible, and we make it so that we take on the burden of knowledge base and implementation so that we participate right alongside our client. We obviously need them to sign some things or transact some things, but ultimately we're the knowledge base and we're the expertise that they can lean on. And it's oftentimes the the question of like who, not how. And like if you get the right who, the right person on your team, you don't have to worry about how because that person helps you do that. And that's where TaxHive comes in.
Yeah. Okay. First off, the analogy you gave of the grocery store clerk is like the best analogy I've heard so far. That is spot on with the difference between having a CPA that's focused on what in the CPA industry is called compliance. Really, what that means is they file tax returns and make sure they're correct. And that is what you want your CPA to do. Sometimes we lose sight as taxpayers because we're like, but no, I thought they were going to make sure it was correct and look at all of the loopholes and benefits and incentives for me. And your point is spot on. You would not expect that grocery store clerk to be walking around the grocery store with you going, wait, 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 don't buy that one because this one is a better price if you get the larger size and there's a coupon for it. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, if you are having somebody do that, you're going to pay for them. And so that is the reality of it too, that I think really needs to be communicated. I love this kind of education and discussion because it helps people understand we deal with the same thing when we're looking at, cost seg write-offs or R&D credits or other benefits. The fear is, how did we miss this or what's wrong or I need a new CPA. And we're saying, no, I don't think you do. I don't want to be your CPA. That's not our role. But you pull in the partners and the specialists that have those other areas of expertise that really expound on and build out or create a more well-rounded team so that you have that area of expertise that really exists in all areas. And so it really is incredible what you guys have done. I have like 3 questions I'm so excited to drill into with you.
Okay, good.
Um, One of the first one, I don't know if you know this, but do you know if there is some percentage of firms you're aware of that have a president, CEO, or managing partner that is not a CPA?
I would say very, very few.
Yep.
Like, not common for sure. And, that's maybe we feel like it's an advantage
Yeah,
for us.
absolutely.
And sometimes you need someone who's not in the trenches to be able to see the big picture. And, I don't know, we have that as an element at our firm, and we still have, our senior, tax advisor, our head CPA, Gene Bott, he's in all of our executive meetings. We're not making decisions absent of informed, uh, insight from him. But yeah, there are some other overlapping benefits to the I would call it the tax hive ecosystem or our little hive, if you will, where when somebody becomes a client with us, we don't only try to serve them in a tax like way. We have all kinds of other business strategy and webinars, and we call them community events where we bring partners that are experts in marketing and experts in sales and experts in, you know, AI and a myriad of other things that we try to enhance your business a little bit self-serving because we know if your business grows and scales and you're more profitable, what do you need more of?
Mhm.
Keeping more tax strategy, more, experts on the CPA side, and maybe to bring this full circle back to your original thought. I love these analogies as well, so this might be another one that maybe you enjoy. But I think that in the accounting space, for whatever reason, the initials behind someone's name make the client assume that that person is taking care of everything for them as it relates to the numbers. And that doesn't exist in the medical space. Like I go and see my family doctor. He's licensed, he's certified, he graduated, he's got the diploma on the wall, but he hands me off to a specialist when I need knee surgery. I don't go see my optometrist when, you know, I tore my ACL or something like that. It's like, for whatever reason in the accounting space, though, that sounds a little bit abnormal that my preparer didn't identify all of these things for me. And it's just a differentiation of specialty.
Yeah,
And
for
I
sure.
think that
That
that's
that
significant.
is the that is the exact example that we use in our world. For what we're doing is exactly that. We're like the orthopedic, so we're doing those. We're not actually taking care of the family practice. Your primary care physician. That's not us. That's your CPA. So you need those specialists. So I do love that analogy. So how did Kevin O'Leary get involved in all of this? I am very fascinated to understand. Okay, I can see your background. I love that you've got the real estate background and all these different areas and saw the need in this space because I couldn't agree with you more. There is a lot of lack in this space, and you guys are filling a pretty amazing gap. I would love to know how all of this evolved into the Kevin O'Leary relationship and what you guys are building.
Yeah, so Kevin is an amazing individual. He's got a brilliant business mind, and I think first and foremost, what we see in Kevin, he is an equity partner. He's not just a handsome spokesperson that wants to sing our praises. He's actually an invested partner with TaxHive, and the way that that came about is that in a prior business, we actually had a relationship with Kevin. We didn't go on Shark Tank or anything like that. We know him outside of the tank, and we were paying him as a speaker, as call it a draw, to show up on a stage, and he would show up live to our events. And alongside that, we would offer some of our services. And he saw how well we were able to acquire a customer, put a butt in a seat in an audience in an auditorium somewhere, and he saw that our business was worthwhile and thriving there. And so when we looked to expand our position in the tax world, he had already run a tax business previously. He actually says it's one of the few one of the businesses he regrets the most about selling. And when we went and pitched him, this is about 6 years ago down in Scottsdale, Arizona, JW Marriott, and we're like all ready and eager with presentations and numbers and everything. And we get into the discussion, and he's like, "Well, just stop." And we're like, "Oh man, we screwed up." Like, he's like, "Hey guys, I'm in, but you don't want me." And we're like, "No, we're pretty sure we want you." And he's like,
Wow.
"No, you don't want me because the time and the I don't want to use something graphic, but like the colonoscopy that you're going to need to go through in order to acquire me and bring me on board is not going to be worth it for you." And we were like, "Well, so help us understand what you mean, Kevin." And he's like, "Well, Sony's got to sign off on this. The Actors Guild, ABC, ESPN, all of his partners with Shark Tank, they control a lot of his brand and his name and his
Wow.
image, his likeness, to the extent that we had to go through a full due diligence process with them in order for him to even be able to say yes." So we went through that 6-month journey. They all said, "Great, this checks out. Let's make it happen." And he became an equity partner. And I'll say it in really plain terms. Kevin can draw attention on social media in a way that I can't.
Yeah.
His face, and people see it and trust it. And not that I'm, I don't know, someone that you can't trust. It's just that I haven't done Shark Tank for as many years, and I don't have the following that Kevin has. And so we knew early on, if we're going to do this at the scale we want to do it at, we need someone like Kevin to set us apart and completely distinguish us from the rest of maybe the marketplace that are good operators and intelligent people, but are, working on the corner of State Street and Main Street with their office sign on a sidewalk somewhere. And we just knew we needed Kevin. So that's how we leveraged a prior relationship, made the pitch, went through the due diligence process, and now we interact with him regularly. I interview him every month as a part of our client experience. They get to ask Kevin questions, and anyway, it's been really fun.
Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, yeah, that sets you apart real quick and a lot of exposure too. Um, with that relationship, do you feel like you have been able to maintain a level of service where you can still service clients at all levels? Because, one thing I think of, it's, well, okay, you've got Mr. Wonderful backing you. So now you guys must be getting really big, or you are really big and you're just dealing with big clients that have a lot of money and all of these situations. So is that true? Or how are you guys handling that from a client service side?
Really good question. So it is accurate that we are a large firm. We service thousands of clients. Um, but large doesn't necessarily mean, and it certainly doesn't mean with us, that we have a distant connection with our client. We're very involved 3 times a week. I don't know of any other tax firm in the country that does this, but 3 times a week, we have an open forum, Ask a Tax Pro. Hop on with one of our top CPAs and ask any question. And So we're very interactive. We host a monthly event in our headquarters where our clients come into our office. They meet face to face with their planner. They, meet their account manager, and we have a service level, I would just say, that is monitored, controlled, and patrolled from a management perspective to say we're not going to exceed X number of clients per accountant. We're not going to overwhelm and fracture the system. And we just know that in order for us to maintain a high service level and have a good referral business and a good retention rate, that's what this business is all about, is retaining clients. And if we can't deliver a five-star experience, then we're not going to be here very long. And so we've had I would say, just hyper focus on client experience. And while saying that, I can clearly put on the table, we're not perfect. We're a business of people. We've, made a mistake before. We've had a one-star Google review just like anybody else out there, right? But
Yep.
we care deeply about the client. Our people know that. And I would say that anywhere we've had the occasion of a misstep, we are quick to remedy and jump on it. And it's something that we are very connected to and aware of and conscious of, so that as we scale up to the next, 1,000 clients and the next 1,000 clients, nobody feels like they're just a number in our system. A lot of our clients, even as president of the company, they know how to get a hold of me. They know how to reach me. We're a very accessible group.
That's awesome, and I appreciate I have so much respect for that perception, or the, I think highlighting the fact that sometimes we get hung up on these five-star reviews. And what I've learned, at least in my experience in my life, is I would almost rather find a firm that doesn't have five-star reviews. And I want to see the real reviews and then how that was handled and that was, because it is truly, I think, in life as well. It's like, how do we handle difficult situations sometimes is more important than, just being perfect all the time, because that is not reality. But back to what you were saying in terms of service and what you guys are providing, that sounds very expensive. Because right in my existing CPA firm, I'm lucky if I get one call a year. I mean, a lot of times now it's just email and that's all I get. And maybe I'll email a question and maybe I'll get a response back in a week or two. So talk about how that's priced. Because again, this comes back to, is this within grasp for a normal average taxpayer?
Yeah, so I'll say this in a couple of ways. So the first way that I would mention it is that as much as we are a tax firm, we are a technology business. And we have a CRM that's built on the backbone of Microsoft Dynamics, but it's built in-house. It's completely custom and unique to us and our client experience and our customer life cycle. And all of those things give us advantages, not only in efficiencies, but in costs of operating and delivering to the client a high value experience. The second way that I would address this is that when a client onboards with us, there's a couple of ways that we interact with and engage with the client. Some of it is on a temporary basis where they just need a short term solution of tax strategy because they had a really standout year, but it's not something that's permanently the case, right? They made an exit and they want to make sure that they handle that the right way. And they just need us on a temporary basis and we can service that client. But then we also have a lot of others that they have a very consistent, regular year over year book of business, that they're managing and tax liability that they're trying to manage and minimize. And so we work with both of those scenarios. The one thing that I think makes all the difference for our people is that we try to de-risk the transaction.
Hmm.
And I don't know any other firms that offer this, but we have a guarantee in place that simply says, hey, if you take a chance on us and you work with us, we have a service level, a standard that we hold ourselves to, that if we can't at least do X, we would just give you your money back. And what is X? Well, it's typically double, triple, sometimes quadruple your investment with us in identified savings. So pretend for a second that the cost of doing business with us is a $5,000 price tag. It can be more than that. It can even be less than that. But if it were 5 grand and you're wanting us to go find some savings for you in the tax code, we'd better go find 20, 30, 40,000 for you. It's a really safe bet on our part because our average client is in the like 60 to 70,000 range. But I would say that that's how we ensure customer satisfaction because
Mm,
most of the time in our space, a satisfied customer is a customer that saved money. And if we can't
absolutely.
do that for them,
Yeah.
then they should tell us to take a hike, right?
Right.
And if that comes up, it would be a, yeah, hey, sorry, we weren't, you did everything you had to do already, and we couldn't improve upon your situation.
Absolutely. I mean, I play devil's advocate a little bit with asking that question and pinpointing, cost is always a factor. But I tell people, and I've gotten to a point in my career as well, is I have been known to just simply say, it doesn't actually matter how much it costs, actually. I know you're really worried about what it costs, but it really doesn't matter because in the big scheme of things, okay, if you're paying me $5,000, the return is 225,000. So what does it cost? It doesn't matter. No, right? It does. But when you think about it that way, the value of what many of these strategies and structures do, particularly in this business, is strategically structure something that has a benefit to it. So it's a little bit different than just something like just strict compliance or tax preparation, which oftentimes there's no, I guess, quote unquote benefit if you want to look at it from a tax saving standpoint. It's just simply you're filing a tax return that's accurate. You're not going to get audited, so you're mitigating risk. There is a benefit, but not necessarily like a ROI, so to speak. I think much of what you guys do, not everything, because tax prep is tax prep, but certainly there's a lot of benefit there. Do you mind? I'll put you on the spot with this one. I didn't give you this question in advance, but do you mind sharing with us, let's say, the top three strategies at a high level that you guys can quickly identify for people that you see missed or things that you can help people implement?
Yeah, I can. And maybe as I approach that part of the question, I'll just also maybe mention that like the tax strategy base for us is one of not risk taking and not gray area and red flag audit triggering stuff. Like that's the first thing that I should put on the table because when we mention a strategy that somebody's never done,
Hmm.
usually there's some apprehension about it. Like, is there a reason I haven't done this before? And is this so? The reason that I need to mention that is that when we deliver a tax plan to a client, it's not uncommon for either them or their neighbor CPA or their aunt uncle CPA to go, "Ooh, I don't know if you want to do that." And I would just mention that we back up all of our work for every single one of our clients. We've never, for someone that did it the way that we instructed, we've had like I think one client who said they did something that they didn't actually do, right?
Hmm.
Where you get in trouble. But we back our clients up with audit protection to say, hey, we can provide the documentation and help you navigate that. But we don't have a lot of clients that are audited. It's like a really rare thing because we just do everything by the book and we do it the right way. But the
That's
top
huge.
strategy that
Huge.
say show up for a client would start out with some very mundane, basic things. We want to make sure that everyone's not missing the blocking and tackling of football or in the tax space. Make sure you're doing the home office deduction the right way. Make sure your section 179 is done the right way. Make sure that the Augusta Rule, Rule 280A, that everyone knows about, but that almost nobody does. And we just have the system and the process outlined in a very like systematic approach to say it's not hard to implement Rule 280A. Let's get it done and let's save the 20 grand and create the $20,000 deduction on the business side. Like the most common strategies I would say that pop up for us would include the Augusta Rule. It's kind of a blanket; almost everyone can do it. And then you get into S-corp election. A lot of people have an LLC, but they didn't know that they could tell the IRS how they wanted to be taxed, and or just a real estate person or an Uber driver or a electrician or home services business. who's like, I've just been doing everything in my own name, or they're a consultant and they're operating as a 1099. And so that one comes up very frequently. But the other stuff that I would say that is very commonly missed, but is a massive, massive opportunity for people, cost seg, R&D tax credits. Um, we have all kinds of solar and, energy efficient type tax credits. We have the work opportunity tax credit. And then I would say on the dynasty side, some people are unfamiliar with solo 401ks. They're not familiar with oil and gas or mineral deposits. They're not familiar with accelerated donation strategies. And those are the things that, I mean, they're home runs. They're big
Yep.
dollars, and I think some of our clients sometimes expect, like, oh, my tax strategy is just going to be a bunch of headache and documentation in order to save 1,500 bucks. It's like, no, no, I mean, like, maybe on some strategies where you're tracking your mileage or something, but dynasty strategies, like, let's go find you 30, let's go find you 100,000, let's go find you 150,000. Like,
Hmm.
let's go find you big chunks of money that are not, now they got to flow through your tax bracket and find a deduction. We quantify every strategy for a client. Say, hey, if you're going to do this one, here's how much we think it'll save you. And that also just gives a client the gusto to say, yeah, I see those numbers. Okay, I have time for that.
Yeah,
And
that's
in
awesome.
the absence of that quantification of the strategy, a lot of people are like, I don't think I'm going to do that. Yeah, I saw a YouTube video about that, but that sounds messy and
Hmm.
difficult.
Yeah, that's a great point because that is kind of then leads into another question, which is all right, then there are strategies that result in alternative investments and complex structures. I mean, I can throw out a few there was the conservation easements were actually very risky, but were not as complicated as some of them. But then you've got like, well, how about a micro captive, which for the just lay person can get very complicated. And then you've got these uh, all such legal structures. There's all these interesting, investment things. All of them, I am in the tax technical consulting space and they're complicated for me. So that does lead into then, where is that fine line between the things that you suggest and that are very implementable and that you all provide going back to the roadmap concept or image of how to essentially benefit from that strategy. But then where some things get just really complicated and it's difficult for people to wrap their heads around and implement. I mean, where do you kind of look at that, and is that just part of your discussion with the client and understanding what their appetite is for different opportunities?
For sure. Yeah. It's the classic, is the juice worth the squeeze, right?
Yeah.
Is it worth all this headache and documentation and maybe multiple returns for various entities that I'm needing to set up in order to pull this off? And it's like, okay, let's start with the dollar figure. What actually is on the table if we spend all of this time? And then number two, I usually treat this as like a scenario of alternative, okay? Which is like, when we are forward thinking tax planning, it's 2026, we'll call it halftime in 2026, or
Mhm.
whatever year you're watching this podcast, right? You have about 6 more months, or maybe you're watching this in October, November. You got like 3 or 2 more months left to figure out your tax strategy for 2026. And far too many people are waiting until the following year of 2027 to look in the rearview mirror and say, what happened in 26 and what do I owe? And here's where this comes into play with what I was talking about the uh, choice of alternative. When you can look forward and say, here's how I anticipate the rest of my year mapping out. You may not know it to the exact dollar, but most businesses can forecast revenues in such a way that would indicate I might have a tax liability of X, or I have, this much that's going to be part of my AGI. And so once I get to that number, I can then say, okay, do I want this $100,000 to get shipped off to the IRS? Or do I want to deploy the 100,000 somewhere else in an investable strategy that might have some risk attached to it, but I already know the 100,000 with the IRS pays a 0% return and is a black hole
That's
of
right.
where my money goes. And so
It's just gone.
almost anything else is a better alternative, let alone an alternative that might pay you a return and keep 30 or $40,000 in your pocket, right?
Mhm.
So I try to tell people we're not going to ask you to pull new money out of your account. We're going to ask you to use dollars that were already going to go to the IRS for these purposes. And now it's just a choice of alternative. Do you want to send your money to the government, or do you want to keep some of it and take some risk on some of it?
Yeah, it's smart, and I think, the juice is worth the squeeze. That's exactly the scenario in which, people should be looking at different strategies, but I love that you guys can kind of work through that process, and I'm sure some of the complexities with your clients. Don't hate me for this. I have to ask the question because, again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I have recently, personally, for the first time, gotten the question, well, you know what? I don't need you guys because ChatGPT did it for me, but I would just like you to sign off on it and tell me that everything's good. So we are doing some content and some videos. In fact, I will have a podcast on this topic exactly as it relates to cost segregation because it is not the same thing. But I would love to pose that same question because I know that inevitably that is coming. That, well, why do I need a consultant now? Because these these LLMs, are perfectly capable now of developing a strategy for me. So how are you guys addressing that?
Yeah, and I think the follow-up question actually is the answer, where that person says, "Are you willing to sign off on it?"
Yep,
Because guess who won't sign off on it? The AI agent. And
that's right.
I would just emphasize that your tax strategy, your tax compliance, and the numbers that you submit, you know, to the IRS, they're not a Instagram post. They're not an email that you're sending off. Like these are numbers that are of consequence and that matter. And I think that AI has a role to provide maybe more efficiency in the space or allow us to get to the 20, get into the red zone
Yeah.
and then allow us to take the ball across the finish line, those final 20 yards that need a human, brain power, detail oriented, and licensed approach to it. And so I would say, if anything, what I think AI might bring to the space is maybe a measure of affordability that hasn't existed before because we as operators can infuse a little more technology into the first heavy lift of the project and reviewing and analyzing and forensics type work. But the key to your question, I think the real answer is that everyone wants the assurance that they can sleep at night. And
Absolutely.
AI doesn't give you that assurance. I mean, there's always the disclaimer at the end that says, I'm not a legal advisor, I'm not a tax advisor, consult with your own. And I don't think AI trusts itself. I can't even trust AI right now to know that it's 2026. Like
Mhm.
when I create an event for my pickleball club and I tell it that it's on June 19th and 20th, it'll say Thursday and Friday, June 19th and 20th, which was in 2025, not in 2026. And it's like
Yep.
there's enough errors and omissions that if you don't have the expertise yourself to double check the AI work, you're going to need to end up paying for it anyway with an expert. And that additional eye of inspection is not free. And I guess you would just have to ask yourself, what is your risk tolerance?
Yep.
And if you're a risk taker, then roll the dice with AI.
Yep.
And the penalties and the fees and the headache that might come, it's probably not worth the squeeze. That juice and that's the sour juice that is coming. It's probably not worth it.
Yeah, you're spot on. I actually had somebody share with me a screenshot the other day that I thought was fascinating. Um, in essence, they had asked ChatGPT who are the best providers of X, and the people I should go look for, and it pulled up here's the top 10, and it outlined those. And it was very interesting. I looked at that and I said, "Well, that's a very interesting list. I see some interesting omissions on this list." And so I clicked it, and what it was ChatGPT had taken a list that a provider had put on their own website that they had written, and they said, here are the top 10 providers in 2026 for X. And of course, they were number one. And then they listed 9 others that they knew were very inferior firms to theirs. And then they omitted other comparable firms. So it was very strategic. And ChatGPT just took that and said, here's your top 10 providers. I think that in and of itself, when we understand that, it is regurgitating information that is put out there on websites and in data that we as marketers and business owners put out for informational purposes, and it uses that as guidance. So when looking at things like this tax strategy and tax technical, I think you again really hit it on the head because um, ultimately it is like, where is the data behind that? And I've said this before in this podcast. A lot of people don't understand, but the term the IRS uses is the onus is on the taxpayer. So when you file something and you claim it on your tax return, the IRS is saying this line you sign, this says in whatever it is, in perjury or whatever, that you are swearing with, blood, sweat, and tears that every number you put on this, you have verified, validated, reported, tracked, and quantified. And that, you are promising all over that it is accurate. So and not just the numbers, but the data behind the numbers with which you came up with those. And I think sometimes people don't realize that. That they're like, well, it's like, let's see if they approve it. It's not the case. We get that question actually with R&D credits. They'll say, well, yeah, we'll file it and see if the IRS approves it. Well, that's not really how it goes. Like, we do the calculation, say, this is what you are entitled to. This is what you can claim based on all of the facts. The IRS doesn't approve it or disapprove it. It's going to assume that you did the work, you verified, you validated, you've done, a CPA has signed off of it, and it's correct. If you get audited and you don't have proof, you're in trouble. And that's where the penalties, the interest, the risks involved is it's not just simply, oh, we're going to disallow this. There are penalties that are assessed when those things occur. So I think that's something that's important to highlight, and I don't know that consumers across the board really understand that. So you
Yeah, I mean,
articulated it beautifully, though.
well, and I would just add, I think that the cliche of "you get what you pay for" is very true in the tax space. And I mean, not in all cases, but I would say in most cases, if you're trying to take the TurboTax H&R, I'm not trying to disparage, firms like that, but it's like if you were to go to LegalZoom to build your estate plan, boilerplate services are going to deliver kind of the equivalent of what you paid for them. And I think the same is somewhat true about large language models and AI in the tax space. That I don't know, you might be able to get a few things done, but there's certainly going to be some things missed or some things done incorrectly. And I would, just knowing what we know about the tax code and how much money we can identify in savings for a client, there's just money left on the table, or the money that you think you're capturing is probably going to trigger some stuff that you don't want to have to deal with later on.
Exactly. Yeah. Devin, I am so grateful for the time. You guys are doing such a cool thing. I've been working with you for a couple of years now and have been thrilled with the work we've done together. A quick question I have again for our audience. You guys are based in Utah. I think that the CPA model also historically has very much been an older style, like our attorney, brick and mortar. We go down, we sit down, we look through our books, we go through that. Talk a little bit about how you serve clients and how that looks based on location, who you're serving, what areas, and how you're set up.
Yeah, so I mean, similar to this podcast, right? We utilize technology to create a very interactive experience and as much in person as it can be to, Zoom call with your tax strategist. And, but I would just say that most of our client experience exists in a portal where you log in and it's, single user sign on, it's encrypted and safe. And all of your documentation, instead of putting it in a shoebox, is going to go into the portal. And what does that do for you and us? It makes you more accurate and more detailed, and your experience a lot more seamless. It makes us much more efficient on the tax preparation side, and even on the tax strategy side, when we have all of your documents in one place. And I would just say, if you came into TaxHive today, you'd see a floor. I could take my computer out there right now and show you, but a floor of human beings interacting with clients, but there aren't stacks of papers and filing cabinets everywhere for people to store things in. Technology is driving our operation. And whether you're in our backyard or you're in a distant state somewhere, we actually think that we're going to deliver a superior experience to you, because you also don't have to get in your car and pack up your things and sit and wait at someone's desk while they peck on a computer for you to tell you what you owe. So um, if anything, I think the experience is enhanced, but certainly some people want that neighborly experience, and we're not opposed to that either. Clients come into our office, they come in for our monthly event, they spend 2-3 days with us, sit down with their planner, and have a very in-person experience.
That is amazing. Well, I love it. Again, I think you guys have a lot going for you because of the premise with which you've created this firm. And instead of needing to take an existing um, older process and evolve it. I think sometimes when you get to start from the ground up and build it in a very forward thinking time, especially when technology is really advancing rapidly, you guys have this beautiful mentality and embracing of technology and AI resources that I think really are benefiting taxpayers and your clients, and it really shows in what you guys are doing throughout the company. So um, share a little bit with how people can connect. I know we have a link that we'll share in the show notes that allow people to schedule a free consultation with you guys, which I think is amazing. Really connect and see what the opportunities are. But any other resources that you have that we can link to in the show notes?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, Real Tax Hive. If you wanted to go see some of our socials, we're not, we're the most entertaining group, if you will, on social media. So we're not like that influencer that you're just going to love when our content pops up, because it is tax related. Um, but yeah, I would recommend hitting that link in the show notes. If you are a business owner, real estate professional, entrepreneur, sole proprietor, wherever you sit, and you're needing some tax strategy that reaches beyond maybe cost seg and some of the other things that you guys do at Engineering Tax Services, Heidi. We're happy to explore the rest of it and see maybe what is missing. If you're a CPA on the other end of this call and you're like, man, how do I not tell a new prospect no and still be able to profit from that engagement? We have a referral network that we'd be happy to bring you into, where you could refer a client to us and still be paid on an annual basis when they renew with us. Um, but yeah, I would just say taxhive.com and use the link that Heidi shared, and we look forward to hopefully earning your business and seeing if we're the right fit, right partnership, and just greatly appreciate the time to be on here, and always good to interact with you, Heidi.
Absolutely. You too. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait. We'll get this out to our friends and listeners. And thanks again. It was always amazing to hear what you guys are building.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a fun conversation with Devan with TaxHive. And the fact that they're backed by Kevin O'Leary is amazing. What I find fascinating with them is that their pricing is reasonable. They're really servicing clients at every level. And so I think it's achievable for anyone who's really looking for tax strategy, tax planning, and guidance in a more sort of strategic way in terms of their tax plan. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to learn more about Devan, about TaxHive, and the company itself, I've got links in the show notes. We have a link for a free consultation if you want to chat with their team and understand a little more about how this would work for you as an individual and how they can help. They will have that conversation with you, and I'm sure you will learn a lot. Before we wrap up, I need to thank our sponsor, Engineered Tax Services, who for 25 years has partnered with CPA firms, investors, and business owners nationwide to deliver engineering-based tax incentives like cost segregation, R&D tax credits, 179D deductions, 45L credits, and a number of other incentives that apply to businesses and real estate investors. If you enjoyed today's episode, if you found it helpful, I would love it if you would subscribe to the Slash Tax podcast and leave a review. Leave me some feedback. I always want to improve. I want to share information that you find meaningful and helpful, and always looking to bring good content and resources to our listeners. I am Heidi Henderson, and until next time, keep slashing your tax bill and building wealth the smart way.